Hey Shooby-Doodlers, how are you doing? Today I'm going to show you how to make this 4th of July watercolour postcard design, something however you want to think about it. All done in watercolour in a kind of a very loose watercolour style, but let's not talk about it. Let's do it. First of all, we're going to rough out a sketch on any old piece of paper. And then step 2, we're going to trace it through to some better paper or some nice watercolour paper if you've got it. In step 3, if you don't want it to wrinkle, we're going to tape it down to the board and then we're going to paint it. Okay, you are going to need a pencil and a ruler to start off with, and a piece of paper, scrap paper. It doesn't really matter because we're going to plan this out first, and I'm just going to draw parallel lines. You might think, oh, it needs to kind of fit within sort of 8 inches or something like that, so that will just give you a kind of feel for how you're going to fit this in. And find the sort of center line there, and we're going to build a square box like that. And then come, if that's the center again, then come in a little bit here, go down, and then we want this to be equal like that again, and that can come down too. And then if you do that, you can see we got ourselves a 4, haven't we? And then that's going to be where the curve of the J comes up there. And there's a thing about curved letters that are curved at the bottom, like J's and S's and O's, is that they go slightly below the line. It's not very intuitive, but it just doesn't quite seem right, but it is, because it's an optical thing. If you don't do that, it kind of looks a bit weird. And you want to have this the same width, so you know, if you want that to be slightly wider, you can. And we can make a real old mess at this stage while we're working this out. And you can just kind of do that. And if you're and of course I will scan these sketches and I will put them on my Patreon page. So if you want to come and support me on Patreon, then that's the kind of thing that you'll get. Now what I'm going to do is a little bit there and chop that bit off there so that we can just fit in a little TH, 4th of July. So the U, I'm going to go a little gap there because I want to put a shadow in here. I'm going to go to one side, and kind of the U should look pretty much like the J. And that's going to go slightly down below. And if you kind of think we've got that kind of gap there, and then that gap sort of there, so that's about right. You can measure it. If you're not sure, get a little piece of scrap paper and measure it. So that's the whole kind of width, and it's a lot wider than it kind of looks actually, there and there. So that will be coming down to there, and then that will be coming down, so we get this nice curve along at the bottom. That wants to be the same kind of width there, and then that width again, we want the spacing, because as I say, we want to have a shadow in there. You can have the same kind of width coming down and the same across like that. Make it not such a great long foot to that L, because we'll sort of compact this up a bit, and then we'll take that up to about there, and then, well, maybe a bit higher, and then that will then on the same level will come out there. We want to get the same angle. That will be sort of coming down there and coming down there, and then we're also going to want to fit some stars here. So if you don't know how to draw stars like this, it's up, down, across, and back. Up, down, across, and back. I do have a video all about this, and if you want to get good at drawing stars like this, then you have to kind of practice and do it kind of 100 times. The reason I'm sketching out on one piece of paper is you can make a real old mess on that piece of paper, but when it comes to watercolour, if you start erasing and messing about with pencil on the surface of watercolour paper, it can get very messy, and you can actually break up the fibres of the paper. So with watercolour paper, it's quite good if you can get a light box or something like that so that you can trace through. If you haven't got a light pad, I've got an Amazon link down below. They are incredibly useful if you want to do this kind of thing. And just to be clear, I get a little commission on any Amazon sales from those links. You won't be charged any more though. So here is my light pad. and then I'm going to put that over the top and light it up. There's all sorts of different types of watercolor paper, and I'm going to use this. This is Botanical Ultra Smooth, and when you've got a very smooth watercolor paper, you don't want to be sort of ripping up the surface of the paper with an eraser. It's a good idea to get some masking tape and just do it like that. Another reason you might want to do it this way is you might want to make 3 or 4 copies to send to your friends, and you don't want to have to pencil it out each time. So if you've got the basic work done on a rough sketch, then you can quickly and lightly copy from that rough sketch. So let's do that. And I am going to really emphasize about pressing very, very gently. So you're probably going to hardly see what I'm doing here. And that goes up to there. I'm going to zoom right in, why not? And there's 2 other things I can say at this point. Is when you're going to be drawing and erasing later, don't press hard, because again it's all about the surface of the paper, and if you press really hard with the pencil, you're going to grind the graphite into the fibers of the paper, and then it's just really, well, it's impossible to get it out again, and you're probably going to dent the paper as well. And the other thing is about copying. I know, that's so it wants to come down there. That's right, that will come there. Some people will be going, oh, copying, that's wrong. It's not wrong, because you've done the original work. Copying is only wrong if you're copying someone else. You're allowed to copy yourself as many times as you like. And what we're actually trying to do here is to create something beautiful and pretty. And that is the ultimate aim. That's what we're actually aiming at. And I just realised I should have done the stripes before this as well. So I'll have to go back to that in a moment. Think about what you're aiming at. You're aiming at creating something pretty and clean that you can sort of put in a frame or give to somebody. And that's what we're after. We're not after creating a Van Gogh original masterpiece, are we? So, in which case, but even Van Gogh would have done tracing as well, so don't you worry about that. So we'll just get this done. Some things you can repeat and say again and again and again, because sometimes people don't hear it the first time or the 100th time. Copying is fine, as long as you're using copying on your own work and using it for sort of graphical means of getting the artwork absolutely right, exactly how you want it. Copying other people's work, that's called stealing. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do here is find the middle there. I'm going to draw, that's going to be a stripe. Okay, so if that's a stripe, then we kind of want about that thickness. So we're going to want to have another stripe about there, another stripe about there. So you're going to have to use your judgment a bit here. So this will be pretty much the stripes, and it doesn't matter if they're not quite right, because we're going to be freestyling. And then get your ruler, zoom out a bit. I'm a bit of a freestyler. I know some people are a bit OCD about this kind of thing, so what you can do if you really want is get another little piece of paper and just kind of flick these, and then come down here, and then we can draw them along here as well. So it'll just give you the kind of idea of what we're doing there. And it doesn't matter that you're just drawing straight through it. Little bits of paper like this with little dots on are very, very useful. Don't forget that. So we're going to have sort of shade, 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 like that. And now we can see through, so we can just very, very gently draw across. And I would do it across rather than all the way down, so that you're getting that kind of flow across. Oh, Mrs. Rayner's calling me. She wants me to get a lettuce out of the garden. I'll be back in a moment. Lettuce. I didn't realise what the time was. It was supper time, but I'm back now. We have this nicely drawn out The next thing is to get a board and then tape it down. So I'm going to get my masking tape and then I'm going to put that down across the top. And this is called stretching. And if you're painting this particularly on a card and it's already cut out, you don't want to do this because you're going to sort of rough up the edges. But this paper is bigger than any card I would want to send, so I can cut it out afterwards. And make sure that it's pressed down onto the paper and then pull and pull and pull and pull. And what this does is it stretches out the paper so that what happens with watercolour is that the water gets into the fibres of the paper and it kind of expands and it wrinkles the paper. I'm sure you've had wrinkly paper before in your time, even if it was only in kindergarten, and you got very frustrated even then. And so when you do it this way, you're stretching the paper beforehand, and then when the paper dries, it kind of pulls it all back together again and stays flat. And I especially like it with doing it with this paper, which is very flat paper and has a very flat surface, which I use for scanning because I'm a kind of a graphic-y kind of person. I do a lot of scanning of artwork, so a really smooth finished paper is really good in a scanner. And now I'm going to use my Winsor & Newton sort of pocket sketcher set. This is cheap and cheerful. You'll also find links for this down below if you want to get started in watercolour and you don't know where to start. This is a good little set to get started with. I'm going to start with, and this is a Rosemary & Co. Series 334. This is a number 4 brush, but you know, you can find what brushes really suit you. So we're going to start with this blue, which I think is, I seem to remember, is French ultramarine, I think. These brushes are quite pointed and quite long, so they hold quite a lot of colour, but they also have a good point to them. And then we're just going to kind of work our way down. And don't get too worried. Just kind of work your way down. And so we're going to cross like that. And what's going to happen is, you can come all the way down there. We're going to find there's a bit of a blob up there, so I'm just going to kind of pull it down and around. So with watercolour you can kind of move it around on the paper. I'll come in there and down and around and up, and then I can see there's this little sort of puddle there, and there's a little puddle there and I can pull it down. So you don't want sort of masses of colour on your brush. And I'm trying to kind of keep this sort of loose and not make it, I mean, we don't want to make it look like a piece of, you know, Adobe font kind of work. We want it to look like a watercolour. We want it to look hand painted. So don't worry if it goes a little bit wobbly, you go slightly over the line. You want it to look handmade. You know, anybody can type something into Word or with an Adobe font and and print it out. You know, this is, oh, that's gone a bit dirty. So what I'm going to do there is I'm just going to, I got the wrong colour there, or kind of mixed it, something sort of contaminated that. So what I'm doing here is I'm kind of wiggling it about so there's just the right amount of paint, and then I need to get back in there and kind of fill that in again, and sort of keeping it wet, but at the same time sort of pulling that puddle along with us as we're going down the page. So I think these are quite good little stars. I think they're pretty good. And while I was planning this out, I thought, oh, nobody's going to want to do this. I thought I'll just kind of do little circles or something. But no, because that's not it's not what the American flag is. It's definitely stars and stripes. So, you know, you just have to do that extra little bit of work to get the stars right. And bring that down to the line there, try and get a nice little corner. Now I've got a piece of tissue paper or kitchen towel, whatever, and so I've sort of got that nice and dry, which means there's still a bit of a puddle kind of around there, which is going to dry darker than the rest. So I'm just kind of gently sort of lifting some of it off the page like that. So now I can clean that because we don't need that anymore, and I'm going to do some red over here. So this is scarlet, I can't remember, so I'm going to add a bit of this darker red in there. We don't want the full dark red, but we don't want the kind of the light scarlet, so it's kind of a bit of a mix. And then I'm just going to spend the next however long painting in all these little sections. Now I can see two things here, that there's kind of a bit of puddling there, and so it's going to dry stronger red there, and I think it already is here. It's going to drawing stronger red there, but I think that's great. That gives it that kind of authentic watercolor look. People come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes, and I know some people are very particular about, you know, sort of it's going to be exact and absolutely imprecise. And if you're that kind of person, then that is okay. You can spend hours doing this, getting it absolutely perfect. But I think watercolor is actually, I don't know, it's a difficult medium, but it's quite forgiving in some ways. And I think to get that watercolor look, that is where it's quite forgiving, so it will kind of let you make little mistakes. And sometimes your mistakes you get, oh, that looks good. So you know, maybe if you're really, really pernickety and precise kind of person, you know, and you've tried watercolor before and you found it difficult or something, you know, maybe this is the time just to say, this is the one medium I'm going to allow myself to be a bit looser with. Just relax and enjoy it. This paint set, by the way, I think I got a video. I'll see if I can find the link. If I have, I'll put it up here. I think for a beginner, I think it's a good set. I think some people will get very frustrated with some starter sets because they don't quite do what they should do. But at the same time, when you're starting out, you don't want to, in case you don't enjoy it, you don't want to be spending a fortune on a professional set. Unless you're a millionaire. I'm sure, you know, other teachers on YouTube, if they were doing this, would probably do all sorts of things differently. I mean, for a start, they might think, some of them might be looking at this going, why is he using that brush? And, you know, I think it's kind of what you know, and it's kind of what you first get taught, you kind of get stuck with, really. And I don't know, these kind of brushes were the first thing I ever knew, and nobody ever told me anything else, so I just got used to doing everything. It's only very recently, the last 2 or 3 years, I've realised that, oh, those brushes with that weird shape, oh, that's what they're for. And I've tried different brushes for different things, and quite useful. But I think mostly because I'm an illustrator and I've got a particular style that is kind of built around the kind of brush, I suppose. You know, if people want you to keep doing the same kind of thing and they're prepared to pay you for it, then you just keep doing the same thing using the same materials, I suppose. Don't change it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I want to get that dry, so I'm going to use my hairdryer. And I realise one thing I've left off here is the T. Actually, I want the T about there, and then the H on the end there, like that. So this will be a bit precise, so I'm going to get some water, and I'm going to keep this dry-ish, so you don't want this too wet. You want to get a nice point on the end there, so that we can get the T coming down there like that, and then we want the H and the H lining up with the end of the 4, and then we'll go across like that. And now we are going to do an offset shadow, and we want a kind of a grey for this, so we've got this French ultramarine, and then we're going to add a bit of the sepia, I can't remember the brown anyway, and that would give us a grey. And the thing about watercolour is to get, when you want it paler, you add more water. So, and if you want to be sure, you can get a sort of a piece of paper just to check what it looks like. And I think I'm going to add a slight bit more blue into that, I think. There we are. And is that pale enough? You can always test before you paint. Oh, and now you see what happened. My brush slipped over and I picked up a bit of red, so I need to go and mix that again. Clean brush. Always clean with watercolour. Now we're going to do what we call an offset shadow. So don't go right next to it. We're just going to draw a line. I'm going to have that a little bit darker actually. And so we're going to draw a line down the side and to there and down and across. We could do it there with the T and the H as well. And then we're going to want to have a line coming down the side there and just across and down a little bit where you start, and then that will come around there. So across and down a bit, and then come around, across, down, like that, across and down, and then across as well. And we start down there, down in between. Oh, I've smudged it somehow. That's a shame, isn't it? There, that's looking quite nice. I think I smudged that slightly, so maybe I didn't get it quite dry enough. I'm too concentrating on moving on to the next stage to show you how to do it. You, of course, will make sure it's absolutely dry. Maybe you'll go and have a cup of tea or a coffee while it's drying to be absolutely sure. Now, let's add some whiz bangs. So we're going to go pew, pew, and pew, pew. And then in the corners, like that. And then across the middle. And then maybe there as well. So it's giving that kind of ta-da! And then I'm going to clean that again. I'm going to just get this French ultramarine again. I'm going to make sure I dry this first. This will actually be quite a good time to erase the remains of those pencil lines very gently. Go carefully. And then no one will. No, how did you do that? How did you do that? That's amazing, they'll say. Then we want to, like I said, we'll get the blue and we're going to do little spirals. Like that. Oh, I thought there was somebody knocking on the door. It was I have an apple tree over the top of my studio and it's June drop, so they're all kind of falling off and rolling down the roof. There we go, nice little cut. So you want to sort of be drawing right with the tip of the brush like that. I used my hairdryer to make sure that was dry, but here's another little tip. You're using this like a marl stick, which is kind of a stick that artists use, but so that you're not touching the page, you're not sort of, you haven't got your grubby hands on the page, and when you do that, then it's creating oils. You're getting the oils from your hand going onto the paper, which is not good. So come down like that, one across, and then join them together. And little V pointing up, one across, and then come back like that. So it's like a sheriff's badge, isn't it? There we go. I did 1 or 2 4th of July videos before, a little while back now, and it's great in the comments box because I'm British, you know. You may have noticed, and I sometimes get comments saying, "Hi Shoo, that's really great, thank you. Have a really great 4th of July. You know, how are you celebrating it?" And I have to remind them, you know, well, you know, Britain spends 4th of July crying because it kind of celebrates the day that we lost America. But never mind. I think we're still friends. I can just zoom that in. There we go. That looks fun. It's got that watercolory handmade look to it. And if you do that and give it to somebody for 4th of July, I'm sure they will be very, very pleased. Thanks for watching. Click down there and make sure you are subscribed to the Shoo Rayner drawing channel, and keep coming back for lots more drawing videos every week. In the meantime, keep drawing, practice, 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 and have a fabulous 4th of July. You take care now. Bye bye.